Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be. My name is Corey Dow, and I'm a technical marketing engineer with HP Aruba. In our session today, we're going to cover switch onboarding with HPE GreenLake and Aruba Central. Today, we'll be onboarding the two 8320 devices you see in the topology into UI groups with Central. Using templates is another option that will be covered in a separate session. A word of note, if you'll be onboarding devices with existing configurations that you want to keep, you must use UI groups to retain the configuration. In this particular demo, only basic configuration settings have been set on the devices in order for them to be able to reach Central. We'll also cover sites and labels, and they'll be created to illustrate how a customer may choose to further define the environment up front, making management tasks a breeze later. We'll also onboard the two devices into two separate UI groups that we can later show how to restrict access to them using GreenLake restriction policies. Okay, let's first have a look at the two devices from the CLI. Okay, just to prove to you that we do only have simple configurations on the devices, we'll just do show run. And the only configurations that really are in place is the one connection off of 148 on each of these devices to reach basically the internet and to be able to reach Aruba Central. We can prove that just by showing a ping to verify that we have connectivity. And we'll just take a look at the config on the other side. And we can see in the config as well that Aruba Central is disabled, so there hasn't been any active connections to Aruba Central to this point. Okay, so now let's go ahead and log into Aruba Central. Okay, and so this launches the central dashboard. And from here, first thing that I want to show is just basically what's going on with those devices that we're trying to onboard. So we can actually see in this particular central account instance that we do see the two devices are already active in the topology, or not in the topology, but already active in the inventory, and they've also been subscribed. So there's not really any other management that needs to occur for this to actually get onboarded. But what I did want to show as well is what do the subscriptions look like. You can see that there's quite a few subscriptions that are available out here. And if we just switch to the switches filter for them, you can see which ones that would apply for CX switches specifically. And there's 4 tiers that are active here. There's actually another tier that's available as well for foundation licenses if it's not active in this specific account. But you can see there's a lot of available seats in this particular subscription account. If you'd signed up for a central trial period, then there are 5 seats available across each of the 5 tiers. So for total management of 25 devices, if you just signed up for a free 90-day evaluation period. So I just wanted to show you that. Okay, in this part of the demo, we've gotten to the point where the devices are active in Aruba Central, but they have not yet been onboarded. So just wanted to show you just a way that we can further define these devices by creating specific attributes for them. They're called tags. So what we're going to do is create a tag, and we'll call it an asset tag for each of these devices that'll specify an asset tag, as you can imagine, like a device showing up on premise that has an asset tag that you scan in. Those could be added as specific attributes to further define these devices. So let's just show how that's basically accomplished. So we're going to go in here and select one of the devices and click Manage Tags. So we're going to create a tag called Asset Tag. And then we're going to specify just some value for these tags, just for demo purposes. Okay, so we're going to assign and then save changes. And you see we've added the one tag there. So now we'll go ahead and do that for the second one. And we'll actually enter a different value here. So we have A and B. And what this allows you to do is just, if you needed to find that device later and you had a very large list here of devices and maybe you knew the asset tag, but you weren't sure what the serial number would be, this would give you a way to find it. So if we select just one of these, we should see that we only have one row once we apply the filter, and that's exactly the case. So just showing you how you can use tags in the environment. There might be other better use cases for this. That was just the one that I thought would be common. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is log into Aruba Central and just prove that there are no actual devices that are found there because they haven't been enabled in the CLI yet. So we're just going to quickly go into Aruba Central and we'll just take a look at the devices and we'll just show that those are empty. Okay, so if we click on devices, we'll see that neither one of those devices is active. So now it's time that we can actually import or onboard these devices into Aruba Central. And so once they get onboarded, there are no groups created currently. So they'll just be provisioned into the unprovisioned device group, which we'll see here in a moment. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to go and turn those devices back on with Aruba Central. And same thing with the other one. And since we have subscriptions applied for these devices, which are required for onboarding, we should be able to see these connect to Aruba Central fairly quickly. Yeah, almost immediately they were connected to Aruba Central. So we can show Aruba Central again. So we have both devices connected. So now we should be able to go to the UI and see them as unprovisioned within this central account. So let's just go back a little bit, we'll come back in. You can see that it shows we have 2 unprovisioned devices. Okay, so now that we have these devices, the next step would be to create to create groups for them so that we can import them into a specific group setting. So let's go ahead and create a group for each one of these. So to create the group, you just click the Add Group button and give it a name. And again, we're going to create 2 groups, one for each of the devices so that we can show device restrictions later. And we can show that this is a UI group. So we're going to go and click Add here. And now we're going to go ahead and create the second group. And we'll add that. Okay, so now we have both groups, but neither have any devices attached to them. So what we're going to do now is assign each one of these to one of the groups. And important, as we stated earlier, we want to retain these switch configurations. If you chose to use templates for them, then you could certainly do that. In this specific case, we're just showing you basic examples of onboarding devices. Templates will be covered in a separate session. So now we're going to go ahead and move this. Okay, and now we just need to do the same thing for the other group. Okay, and again, same thing, retain the switch configuration. Okay, so now we have one member each for each of these 2 groups. And now the important thing is to initially go to the config. And it's going to ask us to set the admin password, which we need to do for each one of these. So we're going to set it to the same password we had before. save. Okay, now we're going to go back to the second device that we haven't touched yet. And we'll go to config there. Set the same password. Click save. Okay, and now we have both of these devices that are essentially onboarded into Aruba Central. To prove that we still were able to retain the settings that we had active on the device, what we can do is just click multi-edit here. And we'll just select one of the devices for time being. And it's not letting me, oh, that's why, okay. So it's not yet in synchronization. I believe that's the issue. So we'll just have to hold off on a second here. Let's go back to the devices, and once they're fully synchronized, you can further manage them. Okay, so one of them, 8320-1 is in sync now, so we should be able to edit that. Okay, so go back to config, multi-edit, select the device, and now, yes, we do have view config as available. And all I really wanted to show here is that we did retain the switch configurations that were active on the device prior. We still have the static route that was defined, the IP address, DNS server, everything that was there previously is still there. With one noticeable exception that Aruba Central now has added the configuration lockout managed option to the running config. So this device can, is now managed strictly by Central. If you tried to enter config context on the switch itself, it's going to basically just not allow you to make any changes from there. So everything is now managed from Aruba Central. Okay, so from this perspective, we've fully onboarded the devices into Aruba Central. So what we're going to do now is just create sites that can further, sites and labels that can further define the environment for just better manageability. Okay, so to get to sites, you basically just switch the group to the global setting in the upper left. And then we come down to organization. And then we go to sites. And we come down to the bottom, and we're going to create a new site. I'm going to make this Roseville Campus East, 8,000 Foothills Boulevard, Roseville, California. And then the zip code. Okay, and so you can imagine a big campus where you wanted to further organize these devices. This is a good way to do it. Split apart the campus, and then you have the devices that are assigned to each of these specific sites within the campus. So now we're just going to make sure that we move these devices over. Okay, and you'll see how that changes the view. Once we come up here to the global section or the global view, you can see that now we have a site called Roseville Campus East. And so now we can even further define attributes within that organization just by setting labels. And so that's what we're going to do also, is just set some labels for these different types of devices so that we can group them as we would expect to kind of see them be grouped. So we're going to add a label here. We'll just add a bunch of labels just for common things that we would kind of expect to see, like access switches, access, core, distribution, things like end of row, and leaves and spines. And then lastly, we're just going to enter the top of racks, which is actually where these guys are going to go. Okay, once you have the labels added, you can just kind of drag and drop them into their respective areas. I suspect everybody can imagine, ways that they would want to organize this within their specific customer environment. This is just an example of how you could think about how to do this. Okay, and now that we've set apart the groups and the sites and the labels, now it's much easier to kind of select the types of devices that you want to see, because you can see these sites grow right and along with the labels. And so we select top of racks, you'll be able to actually look at just the devices that you want to look at. So that's just an example of using the sites and labels, within Aruba Central to help you with better management of the devices, which would help with reporting as well. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is actually invite a user so that we can show how to restrict access to these specific, device groups, because we did define 2 separate groups. So we'll show how that works. So to do that, what you have to do first is we'll go and create within group HB GreenLink, we'll go and create restriction policies for those types of device, restrictions. So we're going to go into here and we go to manage, and then we go down to let's see, right, identity, access, roles and permissions. So there's a resource restriction policy. We'll just go in there and we'll create a resource restriction policy that'll only allow access to a specific grouping of devices. So we just click create. We'll call this junior scope. And it's just, as an example, like you may have senior administrators and you may have, junior administrators where you don't want them to be able to modify the switch configurations, but you may want them to just be able to look at them to learn, how the CLI is with that specific set of devices. And so you click next, and then select the application, because again, GreenLink isn't specific to only one application. Aruba Central just happens to be the application that we're working with in this particular case. And then we click add resources. And this is where you can kind of drill down to the group scope of which groups that you want to allow access to. So in this case, I'm going to create a restriction policy that only allows access to TOR group 2. Okay, and then just to review the settings there, and then click finish. We can see that the restriction policy has been granted. So now that we've got a policy that we're going to provide, we need to actually apply them to specific users. So to do that, we need to go in and just, invite the users that you want to be active within your account. So in the one case you see here, we just have the one API user account. So we're going to create we're going to invite users, and I'm actually just going to invite myself to this. And this set of roles is actually really only specific to GreenLink. It's not specific to Aruba Central itself. So those restriction policies are defined and applied, once the application is applied to that account. So you'll see that in a minute. And this is optional. I didn't actually need to enter that. Okay, you can see right away that the user gets added to the user inventory. And this is where we can actually go in and define, what roles that they're allowed for. So if I click assign role here, I can go in, I can select Aruba Central as the application. And what we want to do is really only allow view-only access to this group. And where we've defined the group settings was when we created the resource restriction policy. So if we move this slider, you'll see where that now becomes available and selectable. So we can go ahead and assign this role, change the role assignment. And now we just need to go ahead and log in as that user, and you should see that that user is only able to access that device in group 2. So we'll just go into Common Cloud again. It's where the caching can kind of come into play, so I need to actually log out of this account. Okay, and for myself, I'm just going to sign in with single sign-on. Since I'm an HPE user account, I can do this. And once we get past the single sign-on, we should be able to move this along. So yeah, this was Aruba Workbench 1 was the account that we were logged into. So now you can see that I'm logged in here. And I've been assigned the Aruba application, so now I can have access to it, and I should be able to log in and see the devices. Okay, and so I was able to log in, and my user account is correctly specified. If I go look at the devices, see that the only device that's available here is the 8320-2, which was in that group setting. And if I go to, yeah, see, I can't go to configuration on this device at all either. So let's see what happens when I try to enter multi-edit. Yeah, so I can't edit the device within config. You can see that the options for edit and express config are commented out. I can view the config. Which is all I really wanted to be able to do in the first place, is just show that you can have different user accounts assigned to different groups of devices within Aruba Central and have them managed separately depending on what the organization's needs are. So that pretty much concludes the demo. Thank you for your attention.